Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Weekly Daily. Today is Sunday, March 26th, 10 a.m. Got up a little bit ago, drank some coffee, ready to get the day started. Got a busy day actually. Got a lot I gotta get through before tomorrow. Gotta do laundry, grocery shopping, a lot of boring email and whatever stuff. But feeling good. Didn't feel great yesterday. I've been back into some bad habits with eating. Gotta get that figured out. But yeah, it's been a fun week. I've been pretty busy out doing open mics and shows. Had quite a few things going on. So that was good. Went up to the Comedy Fort for their open mic on Monday, which is always fun. Good crowd, usually a good crowd there, and good way to test out your material, get a sense of how it's doing. So that was exciting on Monday. Also, I think I went to the Irish Rover as well. Was able to get 2 mics in before 10 p.m., which is always nice. That's kind of been my cutoff somewhat with having to get up for my job. It's tough to stay out super late, especially on a Monday. So it was nice to get those 2 in. Then Tuesday, what did I do on Tuesday? I went to Mutiny. I think that was the only mic I went to. Went to Mutiny and called it early. Got home earlier than usual. Wednesday went to an open mic on the DU campus, Tivoli, I think it is. And then did a guest spot at Lucy's, kind of in the downtown area. Very fun show, run by Jeff Stonick. Doing a really good job there. It's one of those rooms where you're like jealous of how good the room is, both just being a basement room that's like perfect for comedy, but Jeff's done a really good job of building it up and getting people there. So jealous in like a positive way, where you're like, dang, man, that's awesome. I need to find a room like that. How can I find a perfect room like that? But it was very fun. It's he's doing a great job there of, like I said, he found a great spot. He's built it up. It's a weekly show. It's a perfect like environment, ambiance of like downstairs, tight space, brick walls, dark. He's got candles set up, stage, lighting, all of it. It was very fun. I was glad to be able to do a guest spot. I did the show last year when he was doing it ticketed, and it was still fun. It was still great. But he's doing it free now, getting a lot of people out, and I think it's working out really well as far as a formula to get people out there consistently. So that was fun to get out, and really got me, I got to start reaching out to more venues to try to find that's like the perfect venue. It's the perfect space. So that was really cool. And a good show to go support. If you're in the area, very cool space. It's like a little mini comedy club. So it's cool to see. It's cool to see people doing, peers. Jeff's someone that I kind of started with in the Denver scene, at least. And there's plenty of people that I kind of started with that are doing big things. So it's really cool to see your peers growing and growing in the scene and doing big things. And yeah, it's good stuff going on. But that was very fun. And then Thursday I did another open mic at kind of a bar brewery space. And then I went to go watch a show at the Denver Comedy Underground space. And I got there a little bit late and the door was locked and I couldn't get in. And I felt pretty stupid. But I could hear the comedy going on the stage, but it was very cold and I could not get in. And so I went home. So I'll get there earlier next time. I'll make sure not to make that mistake again. Then Friday, Saturday, I did 4 shows in Boulder at Hotel Boulderado. It's technically at like a bar, license number 1, I think. It's kind of like a bar that's underneath Hotel Boulderado, and that was very fun. That's like a comedy club type setup. It's also similar to the room at Lucy's that I was just talking about that Jeff runs, as far as a basement room, brick, kind of exposed brick, tight space. It's a smaller space than Jeff's room, but similar kind of ambiance and atmosphere. So I hosted 4 shows there. That was very fun. That was a good time. It's always fun to do multiple shows in a night, or for a weekend, and always cool to do just rooms that are set up kind of perfect for comedy. Couple shows that we did there. I think so. The last show on Saturday sold out, and I think maximum capacity is close to 60. So it's a pretty tiny room, but perfect. You get a bunch of people in there. It's very fun. But the first couple shows were like, the first show I think we did was 10 people, and it's a real tight space. So it's kind of, the people are literally within like arm's length, which makes it like a different vibe, which is interesting to figure out how to navigate that, because sometimes you're in a room where you can kind of just do the jokes and not really make eye contact with people, or you can kind of just vaguely look in their direction. But when it's a tight room like that and there's only maybe 10 people or so and they're all in the front row, like right in front of you, it was funny. I realized that in the first show that I have to make eye contact with these people, because I was kind of rotating, and I'm always very conscious of, I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, so I don't want to stare at them for too long. So I'll try to, look at somebody for a couple seconds, then move back and forth. But then for a little bit, I would kind of go through the people, and then I would kind of just like aimlessly look in the background. But then I realized, because there's only 10 people and they're so close to me, if I just kind of like look behind them, then they're all aware, like, what is he looking at? Which is, you don't want that. You want people to know that you're in the room and you're a real person. And so it forces you to basically be in the moment and more of a real person, which is good. I think that's a good thing to have to deal with and have to figure out, and be like, all right, I'm here also. I'm a real person. Let's talk for a little bit. Sometimes it's better to kind of just bounce back and forth than just doing the jokes like a robot. But it's kind of funny. It reminded me of when I was in like 5th grade. I had to do a class presentation on something. I can't remember. But our teacher had like 3 classes come in to listen to us present. And I was very nervous. I was very scared, just for, the fear of public speaking, essentially, especially in middle school. And so all the kids were in front of me, and I was so nervous I couldn't look at anybody. So I just looked like right here, like 6 inches above the kid in front of me. And the entire time that I was giving the speech, the kid that I was looking just above his head, he kept going like this. He kept turning around and trying to look where, he was like, where are you looking? And that fazed me. That shook me up. So much so that the teacher came up and like patted me on the back and goes, "It's okay, take a couple breaths, Ben. Let's start over." She made me start over, which is the worst. When you're in like a situation like that, especially as a kid, you're scared. You're like, let's just get it over with. I'm bombing. Make this end. Don't make me double down on the time. But fortunately, the comedy shows were not like that. They were very fun. They were a good time. I was trying to run through different material, kind of each set, to try to just test out some of the different jokes in front of the crowds. Like I said, the last show Saturday, so there was a 6 p.m. and a 7:30 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and the Saturday 7:30 was sold out, so there was about 60 people in there, and it was very fun. Very hot show. So I was excited to go down and do that. That was a very fun time. First show I've done in Boulder in a minute. So that was fun. It's good to get down there. I've got this upcoming week, I've got a couple shows. I'm doing New Talent Night on Tuesday, which will be the day before this comes out probably. And then Thursday, I'm hosting a show at Odell Brewing. Friday, I'm hosting a show at Long Barrel Brewing, I think it's called. And I think that's it for the week. So a handful of shows. Looking forward to it's good to host a little bit more. I was hosting more often a year or so ago, so it's good to get back into the role of hosting some to kind of just practice that muscle and get better at that and not have as long of gaps, I guess, in between doing that. So it can be easy to not do it for a while and then do it and kind of be like, wait, what's the initial pitch? How do I do this again? Not that you forget, but, it's good to do it every once in a while to have it in your head as far as what you're going to do. But, yeah, like I was saying earlier, I didn't feel very good yesterday. I've been in a bad habit of eating poorly. I know I said this in a podcast or two ago, and I fasted and tried to reset, and I just after the shows on Friday in Boulder, I went to Little Caesars and I bought a pizza and cheesy bread and cookie dough brownie. It was not good. Anytime you pay more than $20 at Little Caesars just for yourself, you should be ashamed. I think that should be kind of just a fact. That should be a rule somewhere. But, I will say, after doing a show, especially on like Friday or Saturday, and then the thought of just let me go grab a pizza, go home, chill the rest of the night, that is a very... it's like a dopamine thing where it's exciting. It's like a little treat, a little win. But I need to get out of that. I did not feel good at all Saturday morning, and I think it's because of eating the pizza and cheesy bread and sugar. I woke up with a really bad migraine. And so one of those migraines where like I felt nauseous just moving around. So that was I don't know, just another indication. I need to start eating healthier, exercising, getting good sleep. I know I've talked about it before, but I truly have felt, I just haven't felt great recently. And I really need to reset myself, not just for a week, not just for like a couple days. Like I need to make a commitment. I wrote it down on my phone. I'm saying it now. So the 7 people listening to this can hold me to it. But I need to get back in that routine of being healthy. It's one thing I've noticed or just really thought about, and I need to be better, is I know when I eat healthy, and I think for anybody, but when I eat healthy, when I exercise, when I sleep well, I'm just more even keel, positive, in the moment, able to think clearly. And obviously, doing stand-up comedy, talking in front of people, trying to be in the moment, trying to, recite your jokes and say them in a natural way, or just be, if you're riffing, if you're talking to the crowd, doing crowd work, being in the moment is a very important aspect. I mean, that's just what it is. And I've noticed when I'm not eating healthy, when I'm really off the rails, it's less consistent on stage as far as being the person that I know that I am. And sometimes it goes fine. Other times, like I felt anxious and felt weird and kind of didn't navigate the situation as well as I should have or wanted to. So I really, really need to, and I'm going to try to get in a better routine there, because at the end of the day, it's kind of like drinking. My mindset with drinking on stage. I try not to drink. I want to experience it with a sober mind. I'll have a beer or two every now and again, but for the most part, I want to experience myself on stage in a sober, clear mind because I want to embrace those feelings and be able to get the reps with that sober mind and get better. And if I'm having some alcohol before, it can be easy to get in that routine of like, well, the sweet spot is 2 or 3 beers, and I need to kind of chase that buzz before getting on stage. And it's tough to be consistent when you're kind of, throwing some alcohol into the mix, and maybe it's not the same amount, maybe it's different kinds of alcohol, whatever. It's just another element to make it difficult when it comes to consistency. And ultimately, I want to be as consistent as possible and be funny and get on stage and duplicate that every time I'm on stage. So definitely something that I'm trying to work on and want to work on. So no more bad food. I picked up that Little Caesars in kind of a sketchier area, and because I ordered so much, it wasn't just the hot and ready. It was it's gonna take us 10 minutes before it's hot and ready. So I was sitting there waiting, and some people came in, and there was these 2 like high schoolers. They were either high school or like just out of high school that walked in, and I was just on my phone, and one of the high schoolers, he had like a jacket on with the hood up, zipped up, and like a ski mask. It wasn't like a medical mask like for COVID, or it was like a ski mask. I mean, I don't know if it looked like a ski mask. I don't know if it was specifically, but it was one of those where like the instincts in your head kind of go off, and you're like, oh, I think this guy's going to rob this place. And so I put my phone away, and it went from just like, oh, this Friday night ending with some pizza to like, oh, am I about to get held up? Is this guy going to ask me to give my phone to him or my wallet? And I mean, fortunately, nothing happened, but I had that thought, and I have this sometimes where I feel like with the OCD that I have, I'm like predicting situations and outcomes and what's going to happen as I'm seeing stuff. Not like if I see stuff going on in front of me, I'm like, oh, this could happen. What am I going to do if it does happen? Rather than just being like, oh, I'm not thinking at all. And then like somebody, some situation happens and you're like, oh, I wasn't thinking. No, like my mind is kind of too OCD to where I'm analyzing everything around me and what could happen. And as I was looking at that and thinking like, oh, if he tries to mug me, if he pulls a gun out, because he also had like his hand in his jacket, and I was like, oh gosh, is he gonna pull a gun on me? And like I said, fortunately, nothing happened. But in my mind, I was feeling, sometimes I feel this way where I feel like defiant. And in my mind, I was like, if he pulls a gun, if he pulls a gun and is like, give me your phone, I'm not giving on my phone. I'm going to try to grab the gun, which is idiotic. But I don't know if you guys leave a comment or let me know if you guys do that, where you're in certain moods sometimes where it's not rational, but you're like, I'm not dealing with it. I'm not having my phone taken. I don't want. You're just like, I'm feeling defiant right now, and don't come at me. And if you do, maybe I get shot, but I'm not going down easy, which is, again, very stupid. But that was kind of my mindset at the moment. We're just like on principle. I'm like, I'm keeping my phone, I'm getting my pizza, and I'm going home this Friday night, and I'm watching some YouTube videos with my phone. You're not going to have my phone. So again, fortunately nothing happened, but I did feel kind of that weird, defiant feeling. Anyways, I think this episode I'm going to talk a little bit about my time in living abroad. I lived in Central America, in Nicaragua for a year back in 2017 and 2018. And I actually recorded an episode about it maybe a month ago, and I just didn't put it up. I feel like I rambled in a not interesting way about it, which, I mean, you're probably watching this going, well, looks like you're doing the same thing right now. So I probably am. But I'm going to give it another go, kind of go through my time in Central America, which was very fun, very interesting, a huge growth point in my life for sure. But before I moved abroad, so just to give you kind of a quick timeline leading up to me moving abroad, I grew up in kind of rural Virginia and lived there until I was 25 before I finally I very much wanted to move out, but didn't really, it was difficult, before you move away and before you have experience with jobs and things like that, it can just be very difficult to take that step. But when I was 25, I moved to to Fairfax, Virginia, kind of the suburbs of Washington, D.C., and I worked there for 2 years. And during that 2-year period from like my age 25 to 27, I started traveling for the first time. I have a real good friend who, his name is Derek. He was traveling solo to a bunch of these places. He was going to Central America. I think it was mostly Central America, but he was just traveling by himself. And I remember being like, dude, you are insane. That's crazy. Like the thought of traveling, I mean, for me, it was difficult just to move out of my hometown. So the thought of traveling solo to a foreign country with a different language was like insane to me. I was like, there's no way I would ever be able to do that. But, I mean, he was like, we would talk about it and he was like, it's super cool. It's super fun. So eventually we did some trips together to, I think the first trip we did was like Canada. We drove there. So it wasn't like the craziest thing, but that was my first time outside of the country. We went to Toronto, saw Niagara Falls, went to Toronto, stayed in a hostel. That was fun. We went to like a soccer game there and just explored the city. And yeah, that was a while ago. That was that might have been 2014 or 2015. But then we did a trip to Dominican Republic in 2015 or 2016, and that was my first time, other than Canada, going outside the country. So first time going to a country that spoke a different language, and we stayed in a hostel there and did a handful of things where I mean, it was, I guess it was touristy stuff, but also staying in a hostel and kind of going around. It was a little different than kind of your touristy experience. It was more of a backpacker experience, which was very fun and exciting. And it was funny. My friend, he met his now partner there in the Dominican Republic. So we went there together, and then I kind of third wheeled it throughout the week. I remember being so angry, just like, hey man, it's cool that you found a lady, but also I don't know how to speak Spanish, and would like you to not. I don't know. It was a very high school mindset, but I was also like, dude, I thought we were gonna do stuff. Anyways, it all worked out. They moved to Canada, and they are there currently with a couple kids. So pretty cool to be there for the origins of their of their relationship, I guess. But yeah, that was a very fun trip, and after that, it got me interested in traveling and gave me the confidence to do my first solo trip. I went to Colombia. Went to Cartagena in Colombia in 2016. Did a week there backpacking in Cartagena. Went up to Santa Marta as well. Did a bunch of stuff. Met a bunch of people that were also backpacking. And it was just, backpacking's not for everybody. And the hostel thing's not for everybody. It is very much a cheap way of doing it and kind of you're sharing rooms with people. It can be uncomfortable in a lot of ways. But with that discomfort comes like a level of excitement that really made me feel alive and just, I don't know, connected to the world. I don't know, whatever it is. It's probably anything I'll say is cliche or sounds redundant to what you've heard, but it truly, just everything is exciting. It's a new country, new language. Just like going to the grocery store is an adventure. So that was something that was very fun and a first for me, a big growth period to understand and realize like, hey, I can do things on my own. I'm an adult human being. It sounds so obvious, but I feel like in life we all have to go through these like realizations or experiences that kind of show your brain, oh, I can do that. Like I said earlier, with moving out of my hometown, it was so difficult. Now looking back, it seems foolish to be like, that's not difficult at all. Just move. But before you do it, it's almost like you have to have that first experience of moving to then show your brain, this can be done. I can move anywhere now. Same thing with traveling. It's like, oh, I can do anything I want. I'm an adult. I can buy a plane ticket to a different country and just go hang out there. So after I did that, it really got the wheels spinning, and my interest in traveling. But not only traveling, at that point, I wanted to spend more time in a country, not just do a week and do kind of the touristy stuff. I wanted to like experience another country, long term, like the culture, and really get embedded in the country longer term, to be like, I want to pick up the language, the culture, understand a different way of living. That was like very interesting and exciting to me. So ultimately, that's what I did. I continued working until like mid 2017, and I made the decision to go to a school in Nicaragua. It was like a month-long course to get certified to teach English as a foreign language. So I picked up on a course there with a company. The company was called, oh man, I can't even remember. They're out of Chicago. International TEFL Academy, maybe. But it was a month-long course in León, Nicaragua, and that is where I moved to do the course for a month, but I also lived there for the next year. And it was a very, very, big part of my life. It was a huge growth period. I learned Spanish. I lived with the host family. It was a very cool experience. My first, I think I flew there, got there in May of 2017. The course was very much an in-depth course with a lot of work. It was every day, Monday through Friday, like 8 hours a day, with homework and assignments throughout, and then a lot after our like schoolwork, we had to teach a lot of times as well, kind of into the evening. So it was literally full time for that month. A lot of people that went to it, including myself, but I was ready to do the work. But I think a lot of people looked at it as a vacation, like, hey, we'll just pay some money to do this course, and we'll just use it as a vacation. Which for that month, it was so involved that I didn't get to do that much kind of exploring or experiences in the country as I was doing the course. But after the course, so I started out living in a hostel during the course. And then for the month after that course, I stayed in that hostel. So the initial hostel I was in, I was there for 2 months. And after I finished the course, I started teaching online. Ironically, I started teaching for a company and like kids, or actually it was all ages, in Vietnam. So I was getting up at like 4 a.m. to teach kids in Vietnam because that paid more money, which it wasn't a lot. I got $8.50 an hour But the range if for teaching English, to teach in Nicaragua in person, it was like $4 or $5 an hour. But teaching in person, you have to do a lot more planning. Whereas teaching online, the companies kind of give you the materials, and you don't really have to prep. You kind of just go through the lesson that they have given you. But when you teach in person, you have to come up with your own lesson. So it's getting paid $4 or $5 to do like twice the amount of work. Whereas I got paid $8.50 to do that company in Vietnam, and it was kind of just they give you the lessons, and I didn't have to do anything outside of that. And then in China and some of these other countries, you can make up to $20, $25 an hour teaching English. But the problem was I didn't have internet good enough there in Nicaragua to qualify for those companies. So I chose the Vietnam company, $8.50 an hour, as like that's kind of the best case scenario with the internet I have. Because at that point, I moved from that hostel I was in the first 2 months, and then I moved in with the host family for like the last 10 months I was there. And that was a very cool experience to live with a family. It was husband and wife. The wife's, I believe it was the wife's mother lived with them, and then the husband and wife had a nephew there. So I rented a room there. The room with, all utilities, they would make me meals. It was $140 a month, so very cheap. And they didn't speak any English, so it really helped immerse me into the culture and language even more. And they were awesome. They showed me around. They would, they took me in as kind of part of the family, which was very, very nice of them and very cool. And they were a couple blocks from they were in the city there in Leon. They were just a couple blocks from like the Central Park area where I spent a lot of time. So that was, it worked out perfectly as far as what I was looking to do, get immersed, learn the language. My daily routine at that point, so I was, like I said, teaching English online in Vietnam. I would teach from, it was either 4 or 5 a.m. starting time until like 9 or 10 a.m. So I would work for 4 or 5 hours every day. Before I left, I saved up a bunch of money to be able to pull out a savings sum. So I wasn't too worried. I didn't want to, I had to work to bring in some money, but I wasn't necessarily trying to work full time, like 8 hours a day. That's working, people who do that, kudos to them. 8 hours a day, just back to back to back lessons is insane to me. But I wanted to work to make some money, but also wanted to have some time to explore the country and learn the language and travel around. So that was kind of my routine. I'd get up, I'd work until about 10 a.m. online, and then the rest of the day I would have available. And I usually worked Monday to Thursday, so I'd have like a 3-day weekend, and I would I took a lot of Spanish lessons. I was doing lessons multiple times a week. I would go to a coffee shop in the center of the city. I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, my daily routine would be after teaching, I'd usually go to that coffee shop and I would just study. I would study Spanish. I would read Spanish, read articles. And then I also did a lot of editing while I was there. I was filming videos for, if you're interested in looking back on them. Not many people have watched, but I have a separate YouTube channel called Traveling Benjamin. Not the best name, but that's what it was. And I made maybe 30 or 40 videos about kind of my time traveling throughout Nicaragua. And so a lot of time I'd spend editing in there. Obviously, I would, film videos, and that would be part of the day a lot of times. But then in the evenings, a lot of times I would go out with friends, salsa dancing, bachata. things were so cheap. It was actually very easy to maybe drink a little bit more than I have in my life. And I mean, it wasn't like I wasn't getting crazy hammered all the time, but it was very easy to just in the night with a beer, or they also had Flor de Caña is the rum that's manufactured there, like in Nicaragua. And you could buy, I think a liter, or I guess maybe a liter is what it was. I'm trying to think. It wasn't a handle, probably a liter for like $3 or $4. And they would bring you the bottle and also bring you ice. And, if you wanted like a club soda or whatever to mix it with. And tipping was not a thing there. So you're talking about like $3 or $4 to basically pay for you and like 3 other friends to go out and drink. So that was pretty common. And like I said, part of the culture there was very big to salsa dance, bachata. So a lot of that was kind of mixed in with, we'd go out to do that and then maybe buy some rum or beers. But I also did a bunch of exploring throughout the country. There in Nicaragua, it's in Central America. It borders Costa Rica to the east and to the like southeast, and to the northwest is Honduras and El Salvador. Went to Costa Rica, didn't go up to Honduras and El Salvador, unfortunately. Would have loved to kind of go through there and check those spots out. But a lot of volcanoes in that region. So that was a big thing that I would do. I did multiple like hiking trips where one thing, it's kind of a touristy thing, but they have a volcano where they do what's called volcano boarding. So you take like an hour to hike up with these kind of like wooden sleds. And then it's just all like rock and volcanic, just volcanic gravel rock. And then you just sled down. It's a very touristy thing to do that a lot of people do. It's not that fun compared to a lot of other stuff, but it was still worthwhile and cool to like check off the list of things to do. But that was one of the volcano things I did. I also hiked another volcano that I think it was called like La Concepcion, if I'm not mistaken. I made a video on it, but it was a very steep volcano, and hiked to the top, and really cool views at the top. And then you come down, and it's also very like volcanic gravelly, so it's very difficult to come up because it's like sand where you're going uphill and you're kind of just digging. You're not on good footing, so you're kind of really battling to get up, and then to get down, you almost have to kind of like run because it's so steep and the gravel is not stable, so you're kind of just like running down a little bit. So it took forever to get up and then like an hour to get down. And then did an overnight trip, which was very fun. We hiked, I hiked with a group of friends up a volcano, and it was an overnight. It was maybe a 6 or 8 hour hike to get to the top. And then we set up tents and slept the night there, which did not get great sleep. It was raining. The tent was leaking. It was cold. But again, it was one of those things where, like I was talking about earlier with the backpacking, a lot of people would not enjoy it. It's not comfortable in a lot of ways when you're backpacking, staying in hostels, trying to save money, doing some of these experiences where you're like, oh man, it's raining, I'm wet. But also, in a lot of ways, that makes it a lot more exciting. It's a memory that I'll never forget because it's like, being in this discomfort with 5 or 6 friends and sharing this experience, just a very special thing that I won't forget for a lot of things that I did there, including that hiking trip. But also, so I very much wanted to learn Spanish, so I was practicing quite a bit, and it wasn't until like 6 months in that I actually started dating a local Nicaraguan who didn't speak English. And at that point, my Spanish was getting better. But really, from dating this Nicaraguan, and spending a bunch of time together, I mean, my level of Spanish went up exponentially. So for the next, I don't know, for 4 to 6 months before I ended up leaving the country, got to spend a lot of time with her, and we went on a lot of trips together, and just, got to practice and really do a lot of Spanish, which that's kind of where a lot of my ability to speak Spanish came from and understand Spanish. So that was very cool. It's very interesting and unique dating somebody from a different country in a different language. Like, again, like I talked about before, when you're in a different country with a different language, everything's an adventure. Going to the grocery store is an adventure. And I don't want this to sound bad, but it's kind of similar with dating, where just meeting for a coffee is like, wow, I'm communicating in a different language that I don't have a full grasp on. And this is like, whoa, dude, this is exciting. Like, maybe it's embarrassing, it's scary, but like all those emotions together made me feel alive, That's probably, again, kind of a cliche thing, but it's just true. It's what it was. And so we did a lot of trips together, and that was very fun. We, what did we do? We went, there was a beach nearby that we would, not just me and my girlfriend at the time, but most people would go. It was like 30 minutes from Leon. It was called Las Penitas, and there's another beach there I can't remember, but they're kind of connected. And that was you could take a bus. They called it a chicken bus, which was kind of the transportation there in the country. If you wanted to get from city to city, not a lot of people had cars. A lot of people had like motorcycles, but a lot of people had just nothing, and buses were the mode of transportation. And they had kind of two types of buses. They had what's called a chicken bus, or I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's kind of like a mini bus, like a 12-person Sprinter van type thing. You're still crammed in there, but you could get one of those from city to city, and those were maybe $2, the equivalent of $2, like 60 Cordoba. Or you could get on the chicken bus, which is literally just a school bus, like here in America. I think they sell them to foreign countries, I believe. And they just like, have school buses, and you cram, instead of like 2 per bench, you get like 3, and then people would stand in the aisles, and it was, very cramped, and you'd pay $1 or $2 to get from city to city. And that was the mode of transportation. So from Leon, where I lived, you could take a chicken bus to the beach. It was like 45 minutes, and it's like the perfect beach. A lot of countries I've been to, they say go to this beach, blah blah blah. It's awesome, and they're almost always super touristy, which is the opposite of what I think myself and a lot of people want. It's like, I want to go to a beach where like you can kind of chill and not be surrounded by tons of people, tons of tourists. And not only that, anytime there's a bunch of tourists, there's a bunch of locals who are like trying to sell things to you. So it's like a very overwhelming, uncomfortable situation. But at the beach here, Las Penitas, total opposite. It was exactly what I enjoy, which is laid back, not many tourists at all. Nobody's trying to sell you anything. You just get to enjoy the scenery, have a bite to eat, have a drink, hop in the ocean. So it was a great place to go. But we would go there sometimes. And then some of the bigger trips we did, we went to Ometepe, which was one of the bigger trips. Ometepe is like it's 2 volcanoes that are connected and make up an island that are surrounded by this big lake. So you drive to this city called Granada, which is on like a city that's up against the lake. And then we took a ferry to Ometepe. And it's a very cool experience. If you're ever in Nicaragua, Ometepe is a very cool place to go. Stayed in some hostels there. The island, we rented like a, what do you call them? Moped type thing. And I mean, you can literally, it probably takes a couple hours, but that's kind of the size of the island. Like if you did a circle around kind of the only road that's on the outer edges of the island, it probably would only take a couple hours. So it's not that big. And it was, yeah, very fun to kind of go to this remote island, volcanoes there. They have a couple, there's a couple touristy things. I think there's like this lagoon, or it's kind of like a natural pool. It's called something Ojos. Can't remember the exact name of it. But it's kind of touristy, but not for foreigners. It's like a thing where local Nicaraguans will go as like a getaway or vacation. So it's cool to experience that, because that's not usually the case. You're usually surrounded by, Americans or Canadians or German, people from outside of the country. So we did that, and then there's another beach area that we went to, and just kind of some exploring and relaxing. It was crazy to me because they let us rent the moped. I think it was like $20 might have been $20 for a couple days. I can't remember. But they just threw the keys to me. They didn't go through any instructions, which kind of blew my mind. Because, I mean, you think, okay, it's a moped. It's not that big of a deal. But actually, I was kind of sketched out because, it was me and my girlfriend was also on. So it was a little bit harder more weight. So you got more weight and just more responsibility. You're like, I cannot crash this thing. I got to be. And then you're going 30, 40 miles per hour. We wore helmets, but I was a little sketched out. Also, too, one time we were driving to one of these locations that I just mentioned, kind of that beach area. It was kind of like a peninsula. That was a popular beach area, and to get there, you had to get off the main road and then go on like a sandy road for quite a while. And with the sand and slower speeds, it was really tough to balance the moped. And at one point, there was a car coming towards me, and I'm going, they're leaving the peninsula. I'm going to the peninsula, and it was a pretty narrow area that had fencing on both sides. And I kind of like at that slow speed and with all the sand, I kind of lost balance, and I literally I ran into the car. It could have been a disaster. I didn't hit the car like full speed. It was kind of like I lost balance and kind of tapped into it. But, my girlfriend was on the back. It could have been horrible. And it was so funny because I remember being like, oh my gosh, my girlfriend's going to be so upset. She's going to be like, I don't want to be on this thing with you anymore. I don't trust you. I was shook up. I was like, dude, that could have been a disaster. And I was telling her, I was like, I'm so sorry. And she was like, todo bien. It's fine. She was like, who cares? And I was like, wow, this is crazy that you're just fine with it. But also, pretty cool that someone's like just super chill like that. But that was a very fun experience getting to go to Ometepe. I made a video about that as well. If you want to check out Traveling Benjamin, that channel. But before we went there, actually, like before we got on the ferry, someone stole my girlfriend's phone. I remember after the fact realizing what had happened, but they shoulder checked me in this crowded area. And I was like, what the hell, dude? And then they basically did what pickpocketers would do. There's probably multiple people there, and one person does the distraction and the other person does the stealing. But that was a big bummer going into before we even got there. And again, that was my girlfriend's phone. I think it was an iPhone, and in Nicaragua, it's a much poorer country. So to have something like an iPhone is, one, not a common thing that a lot of people have, but two, if it gets stolen or you lose it, I mean, it's a big deal. And so I thought it was a bummer, but again, my girlfriend, she was just like, she was bummed about it, but also she didn't let it affect. She was just like, all right, it is what it is. I was like, wow, you're so chill, But then we did some other trips. We went to Costa Rica. I had to go to Costa Rica like every 3 months to get basically an updated travel visa. In Nicaragua, like a lot of places, if you go teach English abroad, you get a work visa. So you're like allowed to be in the country via the fact that you're working. In Nicaragua, I think you can get that, but literally everybody was like, don't even do that. It's actually very difficult. It's just much easier to get a 90-day travel visa. And then every 90 days, you just go to Costa Rica for a day or two, and then you come back in and get a new 90-day travel visa for Nicaragua. So I would do that every 3 months. And after like a year, every time you go through, they're like, what are you doing? Like, it's very obvious based on your visa that you're just coming in and out of the country and basically using this loophole. And, toward the end, they were like, what are you doing here? And I just act stupid. I'd be like, I'm traveling around. It's a great country you have. I'd pretend I didn't understand Spanish, and she'd be like, I'm a dumb American. Can I come in? Which worked, funny enough. But so I had to go to Costa Rica every 3 months. And like a month before I ended up leaving the country for good, like April of 2018, I went to Costa Rica, went with my girlfriend. We went to San Jose. So I was going to basically update my travel visa, so just had to go to Costa Rica for a couple of days. And she came along. Her dad actually lived outside of San Jose in I can't remember, the Cartago maybe. But we went to San Jose and actually stayed with some of her family friends for a day or two, which again was very awesome. Getting to stay with local families and get like experience just like day-to-day life in that country rather than the touristy stuff. It's just a totally different experience, and it was very cool. They were very nice people. They got to experience a lot of the foods and common things they have there. Family in Central America is a community, and family is much more prevalent in Central America. And so that was very cool to see. Just like, I mean, it's a much simpler life. It's all about family, friends, like much more community based, which is something that, there's pros and cons to like individuality is a big thing here in the U.S. and it allows you to pursue a lot of things. And there's obviously a lot of pros to that. But some of the community and family based connections that I saw in Central America are something that you're like, wow, that is a nice thing to just be everybody's together. A lot of times, like in Costa Rica, that family I stayed with, it was the parents, and then literally they had like their main house and then like a little mini house outside where their daughter and husband lived, and it was kind of like everybody lived, like the parents and the kids. And I mean, the kids were adults, so they had spouses and kids, and they were all like right there. And that's just part of like living together is kind of just part of it. So it was cool to see that. They took me around. We went and played soccer with like at a local field with just locals, and just very cool to be accepted into this family and just get to experience kind of their day-to-day life and have them show me around. And after that, so we hung out in San Jose. They were in like a suburb of San Jose, the capital there in Costa Rica. And then after that, we went and met my girlfriend's dad. It was my first time meeting him, and it was easily one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my life. It was, it was rough. We went to meet him, and I mean, it was a whole deal leading up to just meeting him, because most people don't have data or the ability to like call or text unless you have Wi-Fi. A lot of people, their data plans, because it's just, less expensive, is, hey, when I'm on Wi-Fi, I can touch base. And so we let her dad know, hey, we're on our way. I guess we were a little later than expected because, we're taking a bunch of buses to get there. It's very inconsistent, the travel. Like, it's tough to be like, I'll be here at this time, just because the scheduling of the buses and everything is not super consistent. So we finally get to his place. He wasn't there. So we like aren't able to get in touch with him. So we're like roaming around this city. And then we end up finding, I guess coincidentally, my girlfriend's uncle also lived there. And so he was able to take us to her dad's place and let us in. And I guess her dad had apparently, like, because we were late, I think he was a bit of an alcoholic. He went and just was at the bar drinking. So eventually when he came and I'm meeting him for the first time, he's like drunk. And for the first like hour of getting to know him, he's like berating, kind of just like yelling at my girlfriend for like, I think he was like mad at her because we had hung out in San Jose with that family before seeing him, which it's like, well, the bus we took only goes to San Jose. You're in like a suburb of San Jose, so we would have had to go to San Jose before anyways. Also, the plan all along was, hey, we're going to spend a couple days here in San Jose, then go to you. So I don't know why there was a surprise there, but he was like upset at her, and he was kind of like belittling her, and I'm just kind of like sitting there. And I remember he kept like kind of yelling at her, and then he would look at me and go, "Sí o no?" Like, yes or no? Am I right or am I wrong? And I'm like, ugh. I either agree with you, or like, if I agree with you, that means I'm disagreeing with my girlfriend. I don't know. It was a bad situation to be in. But in that moment, I realized a couple things. So my Spanish at that point was much better, but also, just like anything, whether it's language or any skill set, even stand-up comedy, like, I've gotten very comfortable doing comedy. But there's certain situations that are a level above where you still have more nerves. So for example, doing a local show at a brewery, not a big deal. Pretty used to that. But if I'm doing a comedy club, if I'm doing a theater, if I'm doing a bigger thing, you have more anxiety. So with my Spanish, same deal. I got comfortable with my girlfriend and comfortable with friends. But when you're in a situation where it's like I'm meeting the parent, this is a more formal situation, I realized in that moment, like, oh my gosh, I'm struggling to understand this guy. And also I realized that my girlfriend was communicating with her father in the usted, with usted. And if you're not familiar, in Spanish, there's basically two ways to address somebody when you say you. So if you're talking to somebody and you're like, you are my dad, you, whatever. When you're addressing somebody, there's two ways. There's the tú form and usted. Tú is basically informal. Usted is formal. And you're supposed to use usted for elders, for bosses, for, as a respect thing, as a formal thing. And what I had done, and I think a lot of Spanish learners, is because it's tough to learn like a million different conjugations, it's very easy to be like, well, I've just learned and gotten comfortable with using the to form, and I'm a foreigner, so it's probably not viewed as disrespectful as it would be for like a local Spanish speaker to address their grandmother or elder using to. Like, that's kind of a no-no. Whereas for a foreigner, they're probably like, they don't know any better. But in that moment, I remember my girlfriend addressing her father with usted, and it dawned on me. I was like, I have to speak to him with usted. Like, it's my first time meeting him. He's upset. And so I use usted, but I mean, I was struggling it was a struggle to communicate and go back and forth. He was hitting me with some questions. He's like, what are your intentions with my daughter? And are you going to have children with my daughter? And I'm like, oh, you're like, I got to go, dude. What are we doing here? It was very uncomfortable. I mean, just imagine like when you first did an interview in English, like when you're a teenager and you're like very nervous and you're like, oh, I kind of bombed that interview. Just imagine that, but like throw in a different language. Throw in a different language into that situation, and it's like a nightmare. Easily one of the most awkward situations. And then after that, so he like grills us for like an hour or so. And then he like flips it and he's like, all right, we're family now. And he tells me, he goes, we're going out to the bar. And it was like 11. I was so beyond like ready to just go to bed and be like, this has been an exhausting day. And I remember like looking to my girlfriend to kind of hope that she would be like, we're done for the night. But she did nothing. And I was like, I didn't know how to say no to this guy. It just meant, so I went to the bar and I just listened to him. I watched him drink and eat a lot of bratwursts, whatever they're called, a lot of brats. And he just berated me and just kept doing. He was one of those guys, he just kept making these points that I wasn't even fully understanding anyways. And he goes, sí o no, sí o no. And I just sat there like a coward the whole night just going, sí, absolutely. You were correct. Sí. Just shaking my head and just being like, get me out of here. I need to go to bed. But that was a very interesting, awkward situation. And then we went back and everything changed. I'll get into what happened when we returned from Costa Rica, but one other quick story that was very funny. I can't remember if it was on that trip. I think it was maybe a different trip. My girlfriend went to college in Leon. That's how I met her, because I was in Leon as well. But she actually lived in, I think, Messiah, which was a couple hours away. And so she would come to Leon a lot, but it was kind of like a long distance thing where, we'd see each other once a week or once every 2 weeks. One of us would go to that place. But in Messiah one time, we went to the movie theater, and we did a handful of things. There was, I skipped a lot. There was a lot of trips we did, but either way, went to Messiah, went to the movie theater there, and Messiah is not a huge city, but also I don't know if the movie theater is super. Well, I think it's popular. I don't know. Whatever the reason, we went and there weren't hardly any. Actually, there was only one other couple. It was us and one other couple. I don't know if it was like maybe a weekday or can't remember. But it was also very uncomfortable. We went in and we sat directly behind this couple. So there's nobody in the theater. There's like 100 seats. and then they're in the middle, and then we're just the row behind them in the middle. And my girlfriend, we had bought popcorn, and so we got the big like bucket of popcorn, and they had given us a tray to hold it on. So my girlfriend is holding this tray, and as we're getting ready to sit right behind this couple, she like she's holding the tray, but like not at an even level. It's like forward a little bit. She's not keeping track of it. And the bucket of popcorn dumps, it was like a movie. It falls over and dumps literally onto the head of the lady in front of us. And not only does it dump on her, I mean, the bucket, like it dumps and the bucket is just on her head. Like she's wearing it like a hat. I mean, it was something like out of a sketch or out of a movie. And all the popcorn goes down. It's like down her shirt, all over her. The boyfriend is not happy at all. And, you know, that's an awkward situation anyways, let alone in a different language. And I remember my girlfriend was like stunned and didn't say anything. And so I felt like something had to be said, but I didn't know what to say. So I was just like, oh, Dios mío. I just did, oh my God. And that was very awkward. Because they had gotten there before us, the couple, and they picked the prime seats. And then basically what we did is we walk in there, we dump popcorn on them, which forces them to move because there's popcorn everywhere. So they have to get a worse seat. And, you know, we just dump popcorn on them. So that was that was such an odd thing where you're like, wow, you just dumped a bucket of popcorn onto the head of a stranger. And that is very weird. But that was a Messiah. There's a couple other things that we did. There's a couple tourist places around Messiah. I mean, there's places. I went to a ton of places, which was very fun to explore the country. There's a lot of, like I said, volcanoes, lakes. You got the coast, the oceans, and then just anything and everything. I mean, it's a different country, so everything is kind of exciting. But back to the story I was telling before when we were in Costa Rica. It was April 2018. Spent a couple days there, and on our way back, so we took a bus to come back. It was late at night, and as we're coming into Nicaragua, across the border, and come in to the country, there are tons of people gathered, like, all over the place. So we're kind of coming in, kind of going like, what is happening? And it was that night when we came in that we realized that there were protests that had broken out. And, you know, I didn't think much of it. It was just, all right, there's a lot of people protesting. That happens. And then it wasn't until like a day or two later, I had gone to Las Penitas, the beach that I had mentioned that's about 30 minutes from Leon, where I lived. And I had gone to the beach there because there was a graduation party for the school that I had gone to get certified to teach English as a foreign language. The school had actually moved from Leon to the beach. So they had a new facility and location on the beach. So they were doing the graduation party there, which I think they usually did the graduation party there anyways, just because it was a beach area. It was a fun place. So I went out there on the bus, the chicken bus, for the graduation party, for the class that I think was, it was obviously a class that had taken it like a year after I had graduated, but I was connected and friends with the owners, and would also, you know, they were in a school as well to teach English, so they got teachers trained up and certified to teach English, but also had a school to teach local Nicaraguans English. So, you know, a lot of these teachers in the classes would help out with those classes. So I went out there to celebrate the class of April or whatever, graduating. And while I was out there, videos were popping up on social media, and friends and people were texting that somebody had set fire to like the main strip of buildings in Leon, where I lived. So like the main strip of building just up in flames like crazy. So I ended up staying the night there because everybody was like, it's too dangerous to take the bus back, just stay here. And I stayed there, and then the next day I went back, and for the next couple weeks, my last couple weeks there, it was chaos. I mean, the country went into mass protests, and the government essentially went from a socialist government to a dictatorship. Like the president was just ordering police to just like shoot people for protesting. So people were getting killed. I think the protests started because of like an increase in social security tax. It was like a very minuscule thing, but I think just like with any protest, I think citizens and countries, they'll deal with like all these things, and then it's usually maybe like a very little thing that ends up breaking the camel's back, the straw that whatever the phrase is. It's usually like a little thing that ultimately puts people over the top and makes them start protesting or lose it. And so basically it turned into like a dictatorship. It was not a safe situation. People were protesting. There were counter-protesting groups that were like in support of the government. People were dying. Like, I mean, in my host family house where I lived, just through the front window, I'd watch protests come through a couple blocks away. I mean, it was chaos. And so it became a situation where the government, like the U.S. government and basically all the foreigners it was kind of like the level 4 or whatever the levels are where it's like not safe, you got to leave. And I had already had a plane ticket to go home for my brother's wedding, and I was planning on coming back just after that. So I went home and ultimately did not return because the situation kept deteriorating, and basically all the foreigners had left. So it was the plan wasn't necessarily to stay there forever, but it was sad to have to leave not on my terms, but on the terms of the civil unrest. With that said, my time in Nicaragua was very, very special. It was a important part of my life, huge growth period where I was able to experience a different culture, learn a different language, and just learn about, the people there are so great. It, like I said, it's more community based. Family and friends are like very much a huge part of the culture. People there don't have a lot of money, but they're willing to give you the shirt off their back. I mean, again, it's kind of a cliche thing, but that's kind of the vibe of the culture there. And it was a very special experience in my life. So would love to go back someday. I'm sure I will. But yeah, that's my experience in Nicaragua. I don't know if any of that was interesting, but that's kind of the overview of what I did while I was there. I've gone much longer than I usually do on this podcast, so I'll end it here with again, I keep saying this, I haven't been reading consistently, so I'm ending these recordings with things I've read in the past. Since my current book, I haven't gotten through much, but this book here, very good book I read last year, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. A very, very interesting sci-fi book. I also read, he had The Martian. He wrote The Martian, which was made into a movie with Matt Damon. It's a good book as well. But Project Hail Mary, very good book if you're looking for something good and interested in space and sci-fi. It's a very good book to read. There's a lot of technical stuff, like science and math, technical stuff in there, which, kind of went over my head. But you don't necessarily need to know that. Andy Weir, the author I think is like an engineer, and he definitely writes like that. But the storyline, it's a very unique, interesting story. I enjoyed it quite a bit. With that said, you guys let me know, what books are you reading now? Any recommendations, leave them in the comments. Any recommendations on books or just in general, if there's anything you want to hear more of on here, if there's things you want to hear less of on here. Any input or recommendations are greatly appreciated. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and end the episode, but thanks for listening, and as always, I'll see you guys again next week.